My name is Andrzej Mazur, and I would like to show you some of the CSS4 features that will be used in a couple of years in the future. So I will show the selectors level 4 specs, some of the filter effects that I find very interesting, and other stuff from the future that will be used in the couple of years, hopefully. So the CSS4, what is it? You know the CSS3, it's quite new, but it's used on the web. What is CSS4? It's, of course, Cascading Style Sheets, the level 4 of the selectors. It was created a couple of months ago. For now, it's just a working draft. It's totally independent from the CSS3. The guys working on the CSS4 can focus on their specs. And as I said, it's just a draft, and it will change in the future because moving the parts to CSS4, the W3C guys had a plan to finish the CSS3 specifications as soon as possible and put them as recommendations. This CSS4 is very new, so there are no implementations in the browsers. And it looks like it will be a far future from now. What is the CSS4 draft, the selectors level 4? Well, I will talk about these pseudo classes in the next slides. The logical pseudo classes, for example, the matches is quite new, and using them we can gather multiple definitions in the CSS file into one. We don't have to write the a link, hover, visited, and focus as we can write it as one whole definition, and it's based on the Mozilla's MozAny. The second interesting logical pseudo class is not. It's quite old. There are definitions in the CSS3 specification. But in the CSS4, the not pseudo class we will have access to different kinds of definitions. We can define multiple classes or different kinds of selectors. So the guys from W3C gave the not pseudo class more power. The location pseudo classes, the any link is quite interesting, but it's a little helper. We can, when we want to define two states of links, the normal one and the visited one, we can just write it once with any link. The second location to the class is the local link, the more interesting one, I think, because we can use this one to generate breadcrumbs menus, because with the local link we have access to the address of the website, and we can style the links that are specific to different parts of the website. We can even define the external links and, for example, check if the local link from 0 is this is our site or a different one, so we can style links differently if they from the another source. The time-dimensional pseudo classes, they are quite tricky. The past, current, and the future. We can describe them as pseudo classes that can be, for example, used in the text-to-speech generation when the words are spoken to us, and we can select those words and style them properly. Or, for example, when we are watching the video on the website, we can color the words that are spoken in that part of time. There are more UI state pseudo classes, but one is new and quite interesting. It's indeterminate. As you may know, the checkbox or radio buttons have the checked or unchecked states. Now we can style the indeterminate state of those elements. And the tree structural pseudo classes. This pseudo classes can be used to match given elements. It's just merge of nth child and matches that I spoke before. For example, we can use nth child even, and we will select the even elements from the div or paragraph. The second one is the matches, so we select the active class. But using the nth match, we can have so complicated state, for example, that we can select only the even elements from the active classes. The grid structural pseudo classes. This one is useful for styling tables because we have the table rows that we can normally style, that they are in the HTML structure. But using the CSS4, we can select columns with ease. We can just use nth column even and select just even columns in the table. The parent selector, I think it's the most awaited part of the CSS4 specification because it's not the parent that we can style, it's the every item that we are interested in. We can, for example, style the LE element depending on the class on the link, because sometimes we have the generated structure and want to style the upper elements. Normally it's not possible, but using the parent selector we can just select the LE element and add the styles to it. For example, the second example, we just hover on the link and we can change the background of the whole body. So it's quite impressive, I think. The filter effects, the second specification that I would like to show you. This one with pictures. So maybe it won't be so boring. For now, I'm showing you the code with the WebKit prefix because the filter effects are already implemented in the Chrome Canary and WebKit Nightly. so everybody can just experiment with it. Of course, it will be normally used without the prefix. So a couple of examples. Here we have the grayscale. We can just add one filter to the original image and have it shown with different kinds of effects. Here we have the grayscale effect. So it looks like it's very easy because you just apply one line of CSS and you can manipulate the images. You don't have to use Photoshop or other tools to have it changed. You can just use CSS. The next examples, when you use blur with 5 pixels, you have the image on the right. More effects, of course, sepia. Hue rotate is quite interesting because all of the filters are normally used in Photoshop, so the graphics know that how to use it. The hue rotate is something connected to changing the angle of the colors. So when you experiment with it, you can achieve different colors from the original picture. The saturate is just, as it states, the saturation of the image. This one is 3 times more saturated with colors. The brightness, if we set the brightness to 50%, it will be half time darker. And the contrast, we can differently set the contrast of the image. Invert, we can change with ease all of the colors from the image. It's known for the Mac OS X users because they can achieve this using the given keys. Wrapping this up, I think this one is very powerful because we don't, in the future, we won't have to talk with the guys using Photoshop to have images changed. We will have to just change one line of the CSS. Other cool stuff from the future that I think will be used. The shaders. This one is known to the 3D guys that are working on the games, for example, and different kinds of visualizations. They can move easily to the WebGL, the 3D graphics in the browser, using the known to them vertex shaders and fragment shaders. That can be applied to different kinds of elements on the website. This can be applied to images or divs or to the whole website. So I think it will give much power to the programmers that they will use only CSS to achieve interesting effects. The values. I think we will have the option to use values in the CSS in the future. It's already in the different kinds of libraries. And we will have the opportunity to calculate the values depending on what we want to achieve. The variables. Another interesting thing that we can use in our CSS styles. We can define the default colors, for example, or widths, or other variables in our style sheet. And we can just use it in the code. We won't have to change the color 50 times in different style sheets. We will just define the color once, and we will have the opportunity to change this in one place. And feature detection that is already working. I don't know if you know the modernizer. It's quite useful library that are detecting the support of the new features in the browsers. There is a proposition that we can use supports keyword to detect if the styles are supported in a given browser. So if, for example, display grid is supported in our browser, we can add proper styles. If not, we can add something else. We can add information that, for example, you have to install a newer browser or something like this. The mixins. The mixins are the fragments that we can define and then use just like the variables. I think it's also quite interesting and can be helpful because just as the variables, we can define whole fragments, the definitions of the colors, font size, background, whatever. And we can just apply those fragments, those styles to different elements. And another cool feature is that we can define fragments with the variables, and we can define the default colors. So if we want pass the specific color, the default one will be used. So wrapping this information, I think the CSS4 specification is, for me, very interesting, and that we will have more power using only CSS, that it's starting to look like a programming language, and we can participate in this. We can, when we want to act now, we can just add some information to the specification, suggest some ideas. We can create the standards. So if we have interesting idea and it will be accepted, then in the couple of years this can be used by millions of web developers on the world. So I think it's quite tempting that everybody can take part in it and give something to the community.
I have a question, but I think for you all guys. What do you think? Because all the mixins and variables need to be processed on the client side. It's not like now the browser gets the CSS only for read, and now in the future the browser should process all the variables, mixins in the client side.
Yeah, I know that.
Like we can do now to use, for example, SAS to precompile our code.
Yeah, but if you precompile the code, that so the client will get, for example, all of the prefixes that he, for example, don't need. So the file will be bigger. It depends on if you care about the file size or the rendering speed, because you can leave it to the front and just have it rendered in the client. The browsers are faster and faster. The JavaScript is very fast, so the CSS could be too. So adding some features to the CSS, I think it's quite nice that this can be used, because if you want to use it, you will use it. But if you care about the speed, you can precompile this. So it's up to you.
But there are also features that you can't precompile, because in the CSS4 they use also like some kind of
Yeah, because this is used on the variables that you have on the front. So yeah, some of the features can be done on the server side. Yes.
Is there a browser today that support all of this CSS4?
No, only the filter effects are supported. Only in the WebKit Nightly and Chrome Canary. But I found a couple of days ago a small library that tries to implement the whole selectors specification. So it's quite interesting that somebody made a library that if you put on your site, you can already use the features from the CSS4 specification. Yes?
You showed some examples with expressions in CSS, and I'd like to ask if you can use, in those expressions, can you use dimensions of elements that are already rendered in the screen? You sometimes did in Internet Explorer with this JavaScript and CSS.
I'm not sure, but I think it could be used because if you have this information in variable, you can just use it in the next slides. Sorry, in the next, yeah.
Because that creates a problem with citing different else's. When you recite something and that gathers something else to recite, and then
So I'm not sure. I will have to check it to know how it works. Okay, any questions? Yes?
Okay, you said that in CSS4 there will be a great feature to checking that our browser are supporting some feature, yes? But it makes no sense because how to check that my browser is supporting this support?
Yes, it was quite interesting discussion. Yeah, yes, it's known bug of this that we don't know how to check if the browser is supporting the supports. Yeah, so yeah, for example, we have to use Modernizer or something like that. But the guys on the W3C are thinking about solving this problem. It's quite interesting, but yeah.